Welcome to today's joint webinar with RightScale and Microsoft Azure team. I'm Justin Fenton with RightScale. We're going to take the next 50 minutes and hear from a couple distinguished speakers, Patrick and Scott, and we're going to talk about software development strategies using Windows Azure. Here at RightScale, we were very excited to see Microsoft send Azure Infrastructure Service into general availability last month. We've been working with the platform and with Microsoft for some time. What we wanted to do this morning was actually kick off and take a few poll questions so we can really understand who's joining the webinar today and get a sense of the type of folks that are on the line so the speakers can, tailor the content for you. So let's pull up the first poll question. And really what we're trying to get at here is what is your role in the organization? We typically on technical webinars that are cloud focused see app developers, sysadmins, architects, and we'd appreciate sort of understanding who's on the line with us today. We'll give that a few minutes, a few seconds. We're obviously seeing a lot of architects and some app developers. So that's great. Thank you for that. I'm going to ask two more questions. Second question, the question really here is, where are you and where's your organization in the cloud adoption process? We typically speak with clients who are just getting started all the way up to the other end who well-versed experts who are diversifying and using multiple clouds. So we want to get a sense of who's with us today. Looks like we've got a good variety, but a lot of folks who are just getting started, which makes sense with the Azure topic. And third and final question. Really we want to understand what best describes your intentions with Azure's Infrastructure Service. As most of you probably know, the IaaS service came out of general availability just a few weeks ago. So we expect a lot of you are sort of looking on how to use that for the first time. So interested to hear the feedback here. Oh, it's great. We actually have quite a bit of Azure knowledge on the line. That's awesome. So I want to thank you for doing the poll, and we'll get the housekeeping out of the way. What we're going to do now is hand it over to our distinguished speakers. From the Microsoft side, we've got Scott Klein. He's a technical evangelist on the Windows Azure business. And from RightScale, we've got Patrick McClory. He's on our professional services team as an architect specializing in the Windows business and the Windows platform. So Patrick, take it away.
Thanks, Justin. Hey guys, this is Patrick. Here just to get things started, we're going to have Scott spend a little bit of time talking about Azure and the general availability announcement. But I want to go over a quick overview of today's agenda just to level set and make sure that you guys have a bit of a roadmap for the next 45 minutes or so. So over the next couple minutes, we're going to have Scott chat a little bit about the Windows Azure general availability announcement. I will give you guys a brief overview of RightScale, and along with that, an overview of the API that we offer, our API 1.5, which interfaces with Windows Azure. And then we're just going to go straight into demos. I think a lot of this stuff is interesting to talk about, but actually showing it in motion is the most effective way to communicate some of the capabilities here. So we'll look at a little bit of integration with MS Build via TFS, so your SDLC workflow process. We'll show some PowerShell just to kind of show what we've hooked into PowerShell so far. And then I have a little bit of a Windows Workflow Foundation demo to show as well. So we'll talk about how you guys can check it out, multiple ways to do that, and then we'll take some questions. So from there, Scott, I think we'll kind of hand it over to you and get things started talking about Windows Azure and the infrastructure services general availability announcement.
Thanks, Patrick. Hey, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm always happy to talk about Windows Azure because that's what I love, live, and breathe. So let's spend the next few slides talking about Windows Azure and our infrastructure as a service platform. So there are several components to our infrastructure as a service. As Patrick mentioned, we recently announced not too long ago, a month or so, that our Windows Azure virtual machines are now generally available. And with that, we did bigger t-shirt sizes, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But the key here is that we've got virtual machines, we've got virtual networks, and really it's the ability to how you get compute power. You know, we have servers that scale on demand in the cloud. It really enables you to create a server in the cloud that you can control, you can manage, as well as provide full mobility, so allowing you to move your virtual hard disks, your VHDs, back and forth between on-premise and the cloud, and we'll talk about in a little bit. But we've got, virtual machines is the ability to say, I want to extend my on-premise environment to the cloud, take advantage of the Windows Azure platform, take advantage of the compute power, and through things like virtual network, we can link through virtual network and VPNs, we can link our on-premise environment to the cloud and take advantage of a hybrid scenario, let's say. So we got the virtual machines. We allow you to pick from a gallery, and we'll talk about that in a little bit and how to spin those up. But really, we've got Windows Server virtual machines. We have Linux virtual machines. We have a gallery full of just a number of virtual machines to allow you to say, I want to spin up a virtual machine. We even allow you to create your own and upload those into our gallery as well. But through the virtual network, this is what really enables you to create a logically isolated section in Windows Azure and securely connect it to your on-premise data center. So you can create a single VM and connect that, or you can create a cluster of VMs and then connect those securely to your network. And it really allows you to make it easy to take advantage of Windows Azure's scalable on-demand infrastructure, all while providing connectivity to data and applications on-premise. So again, it's the ability to say, I want to take advantage of Windows Azure's platform, the high availability, the scalability, and extend my on-premise infrastructure to the cloud, and then securely connect that. So how easy is it to get started? We can't make it any easier. We have you log into the portal, and you say new virtual machine, and right from there you can pick a whole slew of from a number of images in our gallery. So we've got Windows Server 2012, we've got Windows Server 2008 R2 running SQL Server, we've got Ubuntu, we've got Linux, we've got OpenSUSE, all those great images that you can just click one and get started with that. And what it does, it really just says simply pick a predefined image for our gallery and provision your new VM in just a matter of minutes. So it's really easy to get started. So Linux, Ubuntu, SUSE, all those great things. So you got Windows Server or SQL Server and BizTalk Server. All these images have hourly rates. And the concept here is you just pay for what you use. Now, so you can pick from the gallery. You can do this right from the management portal, but if you'd like to sling code, you can also spin these up using PowerShell, or we have a full set of REST APIs. The other concept that we have is we really wanted to make this platform open. So if you have things, for example, if you have other workloads in like a VMware image and you want to bring those to the game, we allow you to do that. So it's allowing you to bring those applications to Windows Azure and really free up your on-premise data center capacity, or simply run those apps in a modern infrastructure. So if you got things on premise, let's take that up and bring what you got type of scenario, right? Take those images, those VMs from on premise, and upload those. And the key here is that we really provide more options, and from there, it's the question we get a lot of times as well is there, how do you project, or how do you persist, persistence and high availability, right? So it's important to understand that these images are persisted. So if you shut those down, turn them off, or you restart, all your data, everything is still persisted when you start those back up, right? But that's just the tip of the iceberg. In the same concept, we want to talk about high availability. So when you create a VM, that VM is geo-replicated to another data center. So that if that data center, if that rack goes down or that VM goes down, you're still up and highly available. From there, let's talk about, we talked about this a little earlier in that it's bring what you got. So if you have a VM on-premise, you want to upload that to the cloud and you put that in your gallery, you can do that as well. Equally, you can take that VM that you picked from the gallery and download that VM onto on-premise and launch it locally. Right, so we're very flexible. But at the same time, you can actually take a VM from another service provider, say Amazon, bring that over to Windows Azure, or take a Windows Azure VM, bring that over to another service provider and launch it there. So we give you that flexibility either, to use like the CS upload tool or PowerShell and upload that into Windows Azure, or mix and match. I want to take my VM from on-premise to Windows Azure or on Azure, or for Windows Azure to another service provider. So we give you that great flexibility to say, where do you want to run these? Let me bring what you got, load what you have type of scenario. Right? So we're quite flexible in that area. And again, what we wanted to do is make it very flexible in the terms of, hey, if you like PowerShell, we give you the ability, we offer a full set of PowerShell commandlets to automate a lot of these processes, to create virtual machines, configure virtual machines, join those to using virtual network to join those to an on-premise domain or to a domain in Windows Azure, to configure virtual networks, to configure storage. So we have at least a couple hundred PowerShell commandlets that allow you to get more granular control over the automation and management of your virtual networks, your virtual machines, and get that control that you're really looking for. You can do it through the portal too, but if you like the automation, we have all those PowerShell scripts to do that. So we have PowerShell scripts to do everything you want to do that you can do in the portal, you can do through PowerShell scripts. So you can use the CS upload tool to upload. You can use PowerShell scripts to create your storage and manage storage, your virtual machines, bring your own machine, things like that. So we actually offer quite a bit of PowerShell scripts. All right, let's go to the next slide.
Yeah, so to add to that, on top of all the great features that Azure's offering, RightScale kind of comes in and adds an extra layer of automation. So we take your machines from booted or turned on to fully operational with the server template and write script concepts that we have in our ecosystem. We'll explain that in a little bit. But the idea here is we want to make it possible for you to launch virtual machines consistently every time in a very hands-off way, from configuration management to application deployment. Those are the types of things that RightScale is attempting to deal with and automate on top of simply having a machine ready to go. Along with that, we offer hundreds of different server templates with different products pre-installed both for Linux and Windows. For Windows specifically, we have server templates that build pre-configured best practices installations of SQL Server, of IaaS, and of Active Directory as well. So you can build those without the headache of having to do the installation. You get all those great best practices that the RightScale engineering team has developed, and quickly and easily launch those into the cloud, very efficiently. And on top of that, there's some extra security that makes this a very secure solution, allowing for varying levels of access to these virtual machines and these different configurations, along with OAuth or SSO compliant solutions that allow for authorization logging if you need that type of security compliance logging for your infrastructure. So kind of on top of all that great stuff that we've got with the Azure PowerShell and Azure API work, RightScale's interfaced with that, and then we bring a number of different features to the table along with it.
All right, so let's wrap up this section by just talking about some of the general availability things. If you are familiar with the Windows Azure virtual machines, we know that we had several t-shirt sizes up from a extra small to extra large, so you had anywhere between shared CPU and like 8-core. But with the announcement of the general availability, we announced 2 new instance sizes, so 28 gig with 4 cores and 56 gig 8-core type of workload. So The whole goal with this is to give you the power and flexibility you need to extend your current infrastructure to the cloud and use the resources that are available for you. With that, we provide monthly SLAs for virtual machines and virtual networks. If you have a single instance of a virtual machine, you got 99.95 SLA. But if you have multiple instances of that virtual machine, we provide the 99.99% SLA. We have great support depending on the plan. So if you have a pay-as-you-go plan or an instance-sized plan, we provide excellent support. We also will be talking about and announcing in June a price reduction, so a 22% price reduction for Windows and a 29% price reduction for Linux starting June 1 for these VMs. So you really want to take advantage of that. But what I really want to highlight here is that if you have an MSDN account, and I want to make you aware that you get free about $4,000 of free MSDN, or sorry, $4,000 of free Azure services for free if you have an MSDN or MPN subscription. You take advantage of these. A lot of people don't know about this, but if you have an MSDN account or MPN subscription, then fire that stuff up. You use that because you get up to $4,000 of free Windows Azure services. Not just IaaS, but our PaaS services, websites, virtual machines, virtual networks, mobile services, all that great things if you have an MSDN account. So we provide quite a bit of services and quite a bit of availability with your MSDN account.
Yeah, and to kind of drive that point home, we'll see it a little bit more moving forward into the demos, but all the demos we're going to show today were done for free along with the MSDN account I have. So that's a lot of testing and a lot of runtime work to make sure that these demos went well. We've done that all with an MSDN account, so you can see that in action throughout this demo. So great, thanks, Scott. We're going to kind of switch gears here very briefly, and I want to give you guys a framework for the demos that we're going to check out next. And to do that, I need to give you a brief overview of RightScale, and this isn't meant to be necessarily holistic. There's a lot more behind the scenes, but from a very high level, just to give you a RightScale background, we're a cloud management company founded in 2006. We support a ton of public and private clouds, so obviously we work very closely with Windows Azure and the Windows Azure team over at Microsoft to keep them, in our system and build them out into the framework that we've established over the course of the years. We started working with Microsoft about a year ago, and we've kind of seen the process move from their private beta into the general availability offering that they have today, and we've been really excited to work with them as close as we have. We offer a set of artifacts in that marketplace that I was discussing earlier, our multi-cloud marketplace, to help accelerate development. So if you need an IaaS server, it's very easy to go out and get one of those. Even on the Linux side, if you need a WordPress setup or you need a Django server or just a PHP server to set those kind of things up, it's very, very simple to select the server template from our storefront, hit import and launch, and within a couple of minutes you're up and running. And again, we're looking at a number of different operating systems and versions, cross-platform, both Linux and Windows. We offer these assets, and these are all managed within RightScale. For the purposes of our discussion today, we're going to talk a little bit about server templates and using them as an artifact to help manage certain scripts and certain runtime operational actions. But just to give you a visual, a server template is essentially a machine image, which is that image inside of the cloud. We've installed our utility called RightLink, which is a service inside of Windows or a daemon inside of Linux. And on top of that, we attach scripts or chef recipes to that construct, and altogether we call that a server template, and it allows for a number of different configuration management steps to occur during the life cycle of a server. Not only are we able to run things on boot, so when the machine first starts up, we can run them operationally, so on demand, and then even run things on decommission. So the the common problem of pulling web servers out of a load balancer rotation. We actually can hit a button, terminate a server, and before it shuts itself off, we can have it pull itself out of that load balancer solution. So just an example of what a decommission script could look like on that. So here's a quick view of a server template in action. This is one of the all-in-one templates that we'll see today. But you can see here just a number of different scripts from a boot time perspective. Zoom in here and just show you, from a boot perspective, we're doing everything from messing around with volumes and page files to optimize access at the OS level, all the way through installing utilities and even installing IaaS and importing a Web Deploy 3.0 package. So this server template is was created to do an all-in-one SQL Express and IaaS setup, and along with that, it includes a number of operational scripts that manage backups and creating logins inside of SQL Server. So you can see, the two different modes here for operational usage. Just a brief look at the types of assets. I've talked about these very briefly, but for Windows, we offer a number of different assets pre-built for you, and those are inside of our multi-cloud marketplace, not only created by the RightScale team, but also by third parties. So these are either open source developers, or you can see I've even got one that I've pushed out myself that is an all-in-one SQL Express and IaaS template. And these are all available for use and for import into your RightScale account to use inside of Windows Azure. So the whole idea here is to build novel and useful server templates that save you time and save you effort to get your environments up and running. So with that very brief overview, I want to dive right into some code and talk a little bit about the API that RightScale offers. So API 1.5 is our version of our API that interacts with Windows Azure. It's a REST API built on a Ruby backend with JSON and XML response types. You can see here in this slide just the types of objects that we're exposing, and this list is ever changing as we release more and more features. This actually is a couple of weeks old, but since then we've even released a few more features inside of our solution to open up access to different assets that you'd see in our dashboard. But very common items to talk about, instances and servers. You can see that we've got a server template object here that we can interact with via the API. So lots of robust features inside of this this tool set. We then took that and wrapped it in a .NET solution. So this is fully C#.NET implemented API wrapper for the RightScale API, and essentially for the developers or the architects out there who are looking at this and who might be interested in checking it out, we've taken the RightScale media types, as you saw on that slide previous, and mapped them to classes in an object model. And then we took the resources, which are essentially methods, and just made them static methods on top of those classes. So, for example, index or instance, as we see down here, there's instance, the media type, and instance is the resource, and we just made them one object called instance, and built static methods for index. And they map generally one-to-one, with this instance index being a good outlier, and you can see that for some of the naming conventions, if you do look at the code, you'll see that there's a default index, and sometimes we have multiple URLs to get to a given asset or a given resource. So we'll add a specific nomenclature, a specific name in there to reference that specific URL process. But generally, there's always a default index, and sometimes other named types of methods. It just kind of looks like this. To give you another example, volume type's a little more simple, and you can see here that the volume type, media type, kind of maps to properties, and we've got a show method, and we've just kind of got a screenshot of what those show calls look like inside of .NET. So let's get into some code here. We're going to talk a little bit about MS Build and CFS along with RightScale and Azure. What I want to do is build a scenario here and tell a story a bit with what we're going to see. The scenario for this demo is that we're a .NET shop running TFS 2012, and we've got a standard web application that's going into production very soon, kind of in that run-up to production. We've got lots of build cycling on a regular basis. We've got a QA team who's working heavily on a more stable build. We want to automate all of the work to take care of making sure that we've got an integration and a test environment up and running. A couple of notes here. We're going to use the Mileage Stats demo app. It was put out by the Project Silk group in the Microsoft Patterns and Practices group. We've modified it just a little bit to use Microsoft SQL Server instead of SQL CE, and all of the code that you'll see today from the .NET client all the way through all the demos, it's all available on GitHub, and there are links inside of this presentation that we'll send to you after after this demo, so you guys can go out and check it out. Grab it down from GitHub, grab it down from NuGet, where we have libraries posted, and play around with it in Visual Studio directly. So just another really high-level SDLC overview. The way that this team works, we've got a team of developers coding and working on a regular basis. They build and compile locally, do integration tests locally, then they check it into source control. From there, source control is going to build and package, and then we're going to deploy and test it via that same mechanism and kind of work our way back around so that dev can validate and or fix the problems that the test team sees. So how that looks in this process is that we have an MS build script that has a couple of custom hooks. There's a custom MS build task to upload tools or upload assets to Windows Azure Blob Storage. So once TFS has packaged an MS deploy package, or a web deploy 3.0 package, it's going to take that package, upload it to blob storage. Then we're going to call out to RightScale and either create a new server or launch or run a script on that or on an existing server to update its installation. And then we're going to make sure that all of the proper backend is set up. So if a database needs to be reconfigured, etc., we can call that from within the TFS run process. So we're going to demonstrate a little bit of that right now. And what I have here is on my dev server, I have a little instance of this application running, and we'll hit debug and go straight into showing it inside of my web browser. We'll give it a sec to load here, and it's a nice little application where we've got some nice little graphics, and I'm going to go and sign in, and our QA team came back and said, well, I can't sign in. And the problem is that we've got the wrong sign-in logic running. I don't have an OpenID URL for my test team, so every time I hit the sign in or register button, I don't go anywhere. So we can make their lives easier, and as a very easy little fix for me to show you the publish process here, I'm going to change the configuration file to use a mock authentication protocol. And we'll see that change here in just a minute. I'm going to comment out another line and restart my session. Give this just a moment to load. It figures that when I do it in real time, I occasionally comment out the wrong line. So we will actually comment out the proper line now. If anyone's ever done a demo like this, you guys all know there's always the one thing that you forget, and there it is. So let me restart my debug session here. And all I've done is, it's a very minimal change to the config that I made, and you guys can check that out in the GitHub account later. If I hit the sign-in page, you're going to see I get this mock authentication page, and this mock authentication page is exactly what I want to see because I can click sign in, And once I do, I'm going to actually get into the application, and I'm going to see all of the vehicles that are in my log, and I'm going to see the cool stuff coming back to the database that I need to check my wiper fluid, my Honda Accord LX. So if the application is running, we've got data coming back into the interface, and we're pseudo logged in. We've logged into the system with the mock authentication process. So we've fixed the problem now. Now that we've done that, we want to get this out into our test environment. So if I open up my CI environment, and I've just deployed this into Windows Azure, we'll get this loaded. You can see here that I've just got a build out here that currently is using that old, fully authenticated process. So now I need to get this out into my environment. To do that, I'm going to check this code in. And inside of TFS, or inside of Visual Studio, I'm going to go over to my work. And I'm going to check in that work. You can see here, I'm literally just going to check it in. I'm not going to bother to add, well, I guess I'll add a comment. We'll make this the RS Azure demo, and we'll go ahead and check it in. Continue to check in one item, yes. And we'll let that do its thing. So now that we've checked that in, I want to go over to my builds. And what we should see is that we've got a build running. And the reason that this build is running is because my continuous integration build is configured in such a way to trigger on every check-in. So you'll see here I've got my trigger set up for continuous integration build at each check-in. And what it's doing is calling that custom build script that I've written and executing it to build and package the MS deploy package, and then execute write scripts on top of an already existing instance for my continuous integration build. So you'll see we're calling this build XML, and why don't we go ahead and see what's going on behind the scenes. So here's the running process. I think it should be almost done inside of TFS, because the build actually doesn't take that long. That's associating change stats. Cool. So as this finishes up, you can see that we've built successfully. We've got a couple of errors or a couple of warnings for developers to take care of later, but we've fully compiled, and we can check out the log and see all of the stuff that happened during this process, including all the warnings. And if you dig into this, it'll show you all the details related to it reaching out to RightScale. So let's look at RightScale. I'll sign into my RightScale account. And you see we've got a lot going on here inside of the dashboards, but I know that I'm working with my CI test server. So if I click on that, and what's most interesting about this is we want to look at the audit entries to see what's happening. And you'll see here at 5/21/11/35, which is just now, we just completed dev test import web package. So we remotely called a script and deployed a brand new copy of the application out to this server. I'll just zoom in here, and you can see all of the detail that comes out of these scripts running, including all of the MS deploy detail with all of the files and file placements that happen. At the end of that process, you can also see that we're adding a tag to this server, and you can see app deploy build ID, and we're serializing the build to show this build ID is on this server. To see that, we can go back into the info tab on this server, and you can see that we've got a tag right here showing that that value of the build. So let's check out the fix for this. Let's go to Azure demo_CI. It's just the DNS name we gave it. Give it a sec to load because it did just reset the app pool. And there we go, we're in. Mock authentication and into the application, no problem. So we fixed our QA bug, and we've done it all through TFS, but rather than having to go into RightScale or go into Windows Azure or even log onto the machine, in a very hands-off manner, we were able to deploy that into our working continuous integration environment. So just as a reference for you guys, once you do get a chance to check it out, once you do get this deck, all the source code is in GitHub. We did look at Team Foundation Server, but you can use this for other tools if you're using it like cruisecontrol.net or TeamCity. One of the only real requirements is that we do use Web Deploy 3.0. And there's a ton of information on using MS Deploy and Web Deploy in this scenario, and I've got a couple references for that. So that's the first demo, and we'll kind of keep moving on here with a little bit of a quicker one. So next, I want to show a little bit of PowerShell and a little bit of what's possible with that tool set. And the bottom line here is that sysadmins like PowerShell. I like PowerShell. PowerShell's great because it helps bridge the gap between .NET and the sysadmin world for me, and it's a lot easier for me to kind of deal with than the command line at times because I have a lot more flexibility. So what we want to do is leverage all those RightScale processes, all that great stuff inside of PowerShell. It's the environment we're familiar with. We're already using it. And I'm going to go ahead and manage a dev test environment, or manage that dev test environment from PowerShell. And the scenario here is we're on our way out the door. Let's just tear down the instances in that environment towards the end of the day, so that we can save some money and not have to pay for the resources as they're running. And here what we've got is just a quick setup PowerShell script screenshot. I didn't want you guys to think that it was limited just to teardowns, so a little earlier I did go ahead and stand up those two instances just to test them, both the nightly and the CI server that we've got configured. So let's go ahead and just check this out very quickly. I've got another virtual machine running here, and inside of my second dev machine, I guess we're still in this machine. There we go. We've got a RightScale PowerShell shortcut in our start bar. So this is exactly the same kind of configuration as the Windows Azure PowerShell tools. Is built in very much the same way, where it's preloading all of the commandlets into the system, and you're able to start accessing all of them very quickly. So I need to log into RightScale first. So I'm going to type a new RS session, and it's going to ask me to authenticate. So I happen to know my account ID, which you can get from the dashboard, or there's information on our support site on how to get that. Put my username in there, my masked password, and obviously you could pass these in all in one line, but I wanted to show just the interactive process here. And you'll see connected to RightScale true. We've now authenticated to RightScale. So let's see what that actually gets us. I'm going to look at all deployments in my account. I need to make this a little bit bigger because that list is fairly large. And you'll see that we've enumerated all of the deployments in our account. So default deployment, API testing, RS compute demo hosts. That list corresponds to the list of deployments in my account. And just to kind of prove the point, I'll load up the list of deployments in my account and just kind of quickly demonstrate. We've got one-to-one all across the board. So I want to work with a specific deployment because I know that we have this this deployment organized for our dev efforts, the MS Build demo instances, and it happens to be one that we're going to tear instances down. And so I'm going to create a variable deployment called get rs deployment with a deployment ID of 390.86.40.01. Obviously, we can get that information and pipe it directly in, but I'm simply pulling the ID from this output of the deployment that we're working with. Make sure we type it in there correctly. So now that I've assigned that variable, we can look at it directly. And it'll give me the same view of that deployment. But let's say I want to look at the servers in that deployment. And there are two of them. We've got continuous integration and a nightly build. We have that CI test server, that's the one we were just working on, and the nightly build test server that we were looking at as well, that was in that same deployment. So we can enumerate that, and I could certainly call terminate RS server for each one with a server ID on it. But rather than do that, what I'd actually like to do is say, all of the servers inside of that deployment, let's just terminate them. So I'll write a quick for each loop. And all I've got here is, for each in my list of servers for that deployment, terminate RS server with the server ID. So if I hit enter there, it's now gone and made the terminate call out to RightScale. And what we'll see in the RightScale dashboard, if I go into that demo instances deployment, you'll see that they're both decommissioning now. And over on the left-hand side, inside of the events, you'll also see the decommission request as well as the decommissioning messages coming back from the audit trail. So very easily from PowerShell, we're able to interact with and take action over our servers, whether that's terminating, creating or running scripts or any other types of actions that you can take via the dashboard. They're all things that you can access programmatically via the RightScale API. All right, so just some resources for you. Again, commandlet code is all in GitHub. We've been working on a Wix, an import or an XML installer for this project as well. So all of that is in GitHub. The API calls that you can make directly. So if you wanted to generate your own web client calls, they are all on our support site. But certainly this set of commandlets and the RightScale.net API client that we've written for API 1.5 is very, very powerful and is doing a lot to automate some of the arduous tasks of managing your own API calls via PowerShell directly. So I've also thrown some other PowerShell resources in here. If you're not terribly familiar with PowerShell, there's a ton of power, no pun intended, in using this tool set. So this is something that's very much worth reading up on. There's some interesting references and pieces of guidance for you to check out. Cool. So the last one I want to show you is a little bit of technology for technology's sake, but it certainly is quite interesting what you can do once you get a tool set into the .NET framework. We're going to use Windows Workflow Foundation to build out a 3-tier deployment. So that's in our terms here, a full setup of a redundant load balancer set along with an auto-scaling array of IaaS servers running our application and a redundant set of SQL servers running in a mere pair configuration. So the workflow itself looks a little bit like this left to right. We're going to import the server templates. So the first step is to make sure that the server templates are available to the account. Once the server templates are brought in, we're going to create a deployment, which is a logical container to hold all of our machines. Then we're going to go ahead and create the servers. So this isn't creating the servers in the cloud yet. We're just creating the definition of those servers inside of RightScale. We do a little bit of update manipulation to change inputs, and I'll show you a little bit of that in the RightScale dashboard. And then we're going to launch all of these in sequential order, wait for them to finish, and do some final configuration to set up DNS and initialize mirroring on top of SQL Server. And just to show you, as far as using this API set to extend other parts of the .NET framework, it's very, very simple to do the type of work that you might want to do for different pieces of .NET. In this case, for Windows Workflow Foundation, we created a custom code activity, and the actual functional piece of code to do the call is one line. It's Server.launch with a serverID. And this is just to execute the launch task that we've created. There's some logging involved. We do some checking to make sure that we've authenticated to the API client, but the guts and the work that gets done is really in a single line. So going into other parts of the framework, if you wanted to extend your own tool set or another, it's very simple to take this and consume it. So let's make sure that this works. Let's take a look at the demo. Inside of Visual Studio here, it's a little hard to look at times because it's an IDE and not the prettiest of design time environments. But I've got an entire XAML workflow stubbed out here. It was left to right in the slide. It's top down here. But we import our server templates to start. We create our deployment and create some servers, and then we start into the process of launching them. So you'll see we update some inputs for our first SQL server, and then we go and try to launch it. And overall, it's a pretty wide file, and it's very difficult to visualize it fully, even on a very large screen. But you'll see we're doing 4 sets of servers in parallel. Once they finish, which does include running a database restore and creating a database user for the application. So you can see that right here, where inside of the first SQL server that we create, we're going to run some operational scripts on top of that already running server, and we restore and create our user. Once we do that, we set up public DNS for our load balancers, and then we enable our IaaS array and set up mirroring. So let's check out and see where we are. So I've got this RS Azure webinar 3-tier workflow demo. You'll see it was created at 11 this morning, so that was just over 49 minutes ago. And if we check it out, it looks like everything's pretty green here. We've got operational servers, 2 instances of HA proxy for load balancers. Let me go back to that. Sorry about that. So we've got those 2 instances of HA proxy running along with 2 instances of SQL Server, and those are currently still working on getting the mirroring session set up. So I'll show you what's going on there because it is still processing. And then we have an array of IaaS tiers applications. So let's see what happens when we go to our DNS name. So Azure Workflow demo.cloudlord.com is our domain, and there we go. We're up and running, and this is back to our production-ready build. So we're back to our required authentication page. But to demonstrate this, what you can see here is that without any manual intervention, we started processing this at 11 this morning, and within 40 minutes, this was actually ready a little bit ago, but within 40 minutes we had a full stack of servers running, configured to the specific configuration that we needed with the database and application that are running on it, public DNS set up for it, and all of the high safety features on their way to being configured. And what we can see there, if we go into the second SQL server, we check out its audit entries, you'll see here that we're working on SQL init mirroring, which is a ridiculously long script, but this is the script that's managing the mirror initialization for this server, and it's interacting with RightScale. It's interacting with the other server to create a synchronous mirror pair of SQL servers. And just to prove it, it's 2:51 my time. I'm on the East Coast, but I did throw in just a little bit of a funny timestamp screenshot for the record. We've got 11 a.m. the start time for that, and clearly within a very short period of time, and without any manual intervention, we had a full setup running. So great, a great place to start for systems that you want to configure, or well-known configurations that you need to be able to duplicate or replicate on a regular basis. And all of the code activities, again, all of the stuff that went into this for you to be able to build your own workflows are available on GitHub and on NuGet. So you can import that via NuGet into your Visual Studio environment and check it out right there. So the last slide here is just to check it out for free. You can check out RightScale for free, hook up your MSDN account to that, or even go to windowsazure.com and sign up for a Windows Azure account directly there as well, and bring it over to RightScale and hook all of this up in one place. So at this point, we're going to take a couple questions. We've got a big list already compiled here. And I just want to take a minute to address a couple of specifics. So, the first question here is, do you have a server template for SVN servers? So there's kind of two answers to this. We do have servers that will interact with SVN for application download and management. So if you want to pull your code from SVN via like a tag, or you want to pull from a specific branch, we do have server templates and scripts that do that. I don't believe, though, that we have an SVN server template, or a server template that actually would expose SVN for you to use as a code repository. So if that doesn't address it, please feel free to just track back in the chat, and I'll be happy to circle back on that one. The next question here is there a charge for created but not running VMs so you can pre-build for needs but leave off until needed? So that does depend on the cloud. RightScale gives you the ability to interact with clouds whether or not they charge you for machines that are not running or not. So the concept behind server templates gives you the ability to build idempotent and reliably consistent server templates that, to boot a new one, you would essentially be picking up where you left off if you were in dev, or it would give you the ability to just terminate and completely delete and save that cost whenever you are not able to take advantage of that. I know some clouds do offer that feature and others don't, so we kind of bridge the gap for that need. Scott, do you have any, I know there's a ton of great questions in here. Do you have any that you'd like to pick up and address?
Yeah, so let me piggyback on that. So currently in Windows Azure, if you have a virtual machine, even if you turn that off, you're still paying for it. But that's currently, I think they're looking at changing that. So that may be changing a little bit. There is one of the questions that was asked is there an Azure equivalent to the Amazon's availability zones? And absolutely, it's called availability groups. Provides the same functionality, same flexibility for that, giving you that high availability and uptime. There was another one, and I'd kind of like more information on this one, I think. It says, what is the RPO of the geo-replication? I'm not quite sure what they're asking here, but in this case, I think what happens is when you spin up a VM, if a VM ever goes down, then if the primary ever goes down, then you're automatically routed to one of your secondary copies, and it just updates the DNS. So you're always talking to the primary, and any data synchronization is automatically done. So there's no downtime. All the transactions are kept. So the geo-replications happens automatically. So you always have that disaster recovery scenario going. Hopefully that answers the question. And then one other question is the virtual network just an IPsec tunnel? Absolutely, that's what the virtual network provides.
Cool. Another one here. Can we implement multi-distributed ERP systems for construction on this cloud? I think the answer here is that there are a lot of complexities that go into implementing ERPs in any system. There are additional kind of concerns. I wouldn't call them concerns. I'd call them things to consider as you're building that out as far as managing long-term uptime and managing that type of infrastructure in the cloud. That having been said, though, RightScale has helped hundreds of customers deploy production architectures which require that same type of security, high availability, and scalability, across a number of different clouds, and even inside of Windows Azure. So the specific use case of running an ERP, while it isn't something that we offer server templates for, we have worked with clients who have done that. And certainly have seen that be very successful when it's managed properly and built consistently with best practices.
Yeah.
I mean, Scott, anything from an ERP perspective? I know that's kind of some of your core interest as well from a database perspective, just how big those guys tend to be.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add to that. I think you hit that right on. So.
Cool. There's a good question here, Scott. Can you switch from an AWS zone to a Microsoft Azure site and back? There's kind of two parts to this. Why don't you go ahead?
I'm trying to. Can you switch from an AWS zone? I'm not quite sure what he means by zone. I think we talked about this. Can you? So absolutely. So you can take a virtual machine from Azure, or sorry, from Amazon over to Azure. If you want to move it back, move it back. I think that's what he's asking. Hopefully, I don't know about if he's talking availability zones. Not quite sure. That I don't know if he's talking about availability zones. But you can certainly take a VM from one to the other and back. Yeah.
And if you aren't looking to move a VM, the configurations that you build inside of RightScale can be applied to the the RightScale provided images or a custom base image in either cloud consistently. So some of that, if you were looking to move your AWS workload that runs in RightScale today over to Azure, most server templates that are properly configured, you could easily bring them over to Azure by just changing the cloud.
Right.
And the server template, the all-in-one server template that I was using behind the scenes for the dev test and TFS hooked demos, the one that's available is cross-cloud compatible, so you could build that in one place or another.
Right. And there's one other question here I wanted to get to that I think that you and I both need to address. It says, when do you expect to have for Azure the same level of support you have there for Amazon? This might be yours, like virtual networks, SSH keys, storage management, affinity groups. Mm-hmm. Is he talking about RightScale there?
I think he is, yeah. And
okay.
The story there is that we've been working with a number of clouds for a long time, and specific to parity with other products out there from a RightScale perspective, we're actively working on that integration effort with Windows Azure. It's less than 2 years with it, so we're working really closely with the Azure engineering team to build that roadmap out, and we update it on a very regular basis. And
cool.
Also add that if there's any specific features that people are looking for, once you log into the RightScale dashboard, you can go to the feedback tab and give our product management team feedback directly about features or changes that you'd like to see.
Okay, excellent.
Cool. Well, I think that's the end of the hour. I know that a couple of people were asking about slide availability again. I think those will be out late tomorrow morning. and we'll get those posted on the RightScale site. But just wanted to thank everyone for your time. We'll throw the contact information up there if you guys are interested in getting hold of us. And I believe that concludes this webinar. Thanks everyone for attending, and have a great day.
Thanks everybody.